We're live. Welcome to Coffee Ride. I'm DJ Mars Miranda. Joining me, of course, our only Pinoy pro cyclist in Europe, Paco Ochoa. And tonight, we have a very special guest. He is the head of Pasig Transport, Director of Sustainable Transportation for Pasig City. Anton C, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. Nice to meet you, Paco. Nice to meet you, Mars. Always a pleasure.
Ayun. So, Anton, just a brief kwento lang. Because the other day we posted something about bike lanes. And it's actually something that we've been talking about for the past year or so. And our takeaway from it is not everyone understands the whole concept of how a bike lane is supposed to work. So
Right,
today,
yeah.
hopefully, ayan, we'll talk about it. We'll debunk all the misconceptions and all that. So
Sure.
ayan, good evening. Let's just say batiin ko lang 'tong mga to. Good evening, Alvin Haloshos, Marco Sadsad. Ayan, ito yung mga regular
Yeah, yeah.
viewers natin eh. Sabi ni
Oh,
Marco,
wow.
get ready to rumble. Ayan. Kasi itong bike
Yeah.
talagang hot topic to ever since eh. Parang ayan. So guys, if you're watching, si Anton, siya yung head ng Pasig Transport. So kung sa
Yeah.
amin hindi kayo naniniwala, ma- siguro naman sa kanya maniniwala na kayo, 'di ba? Kasi baka iniisip nyo puro kalokohan lang kami. So Anton is here to answer all our questions at para
Sure,
naman
sige.
magkaalaman na. Ayan, Joseph David, good evening from I Love My Wife Cycling Club. Earl Bautista, good evening Miss Sasa from Vitargo, Philippines. Ayan, so game. Let's get into it. So
Sige.
Anton,
Sure, sige.
ito, background. Anton, you were saying when we were messaging, you said you were like responsible for laying out the bike lanes in Pasig City. Tama ba? Parang you were part of that group who...
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ayun.
Sorry, medyo
Can you hear?
nag-lag ng konti. Sorry about that, Mars. Could you repeat that? Oh,
No
yun. Smooth
problem.
na.
Ayan. Hindi. Kasi, di ba, when we were messaging the other day, you were saying na you were there from the beginning. You were from the planning of the bike lanes to, how to lay it out, ganyan. So, obviously, for everyone's benefit, ano ba yung na-decide nyo bakit tayo naglagay ng bike lanes? Like, not just in Pasig, but
Yeah.
like the whole of Metro Manila. So, ano
Sige,
yung
sure.
reason? Yeah.
I Yeah, sige. I think maybe Mars, if it's okay, I can go into a bit of a background for unlike policy of like transportation and cycling policy generally. I think maybe siguro parang we don't want to get too technical into it, pero I think
Yeah.
this is just I feel like it's worth talking about because this is kind of also my training as someone who studied transportation dun sa master's program ko eh. Hello?
Yes,
Kaya lang,
we're
I think
here.
there's a little bit of a lag. See if I can get back in.
Gumagalaw ba kami lahat?
Magalaw naman.
Magalaw.
Okay. Ayun. Sige, yun. I think this is better, guys. Parang can you hear me now?
Yep.
Ayun, yeah, sige. I think parang nakakonect kasi ako sa maling network sa bahay eh. But yun, sige. So I think this is much smoother now. But Mars, I think if it's okay, I'll talk a little bit about the background of cycling policy generally. Because this is something I studied when I went to do my master's in transportation in the UK. So it's something where I've really dedicated my career to this, and it's also a work that's sort of new in the Philippines also. Eh. Like, syempre in the Philippines for the last like 20, 30 or so years, medyo bago lang yung concept ng bike lane sa atin eh. When other countries like Amsterdam, like the Netherlands, for instance, where they're really famous for bike lanes, they've been doing it for a lot longer than us, but also not so long ago as people might expect. Eh. Kasi if you look at the pictures of like Amsterdam, for instance, where it's famous for being a cycling country, they only really started to do it in the 70s and 80s. Eh. Like if you look at pictures of the Netherlands from the 50s, it really looks like the Philippines. So it's not like the Dutch people have been this way for hundreds of years. Eh. It's really something where it was a policy choice that they did to really make their streets safer for cycling. And again, to answer the question, why do we do this, diba? Because I think it's also important to look at the concept of a city, diba? It's like we've got Metro Manila, short of population control, short of telling people to stop having kids. It's not like we're going to ever like stop having more and more people in Metro Manila, right? And even if you tell people to move to the province, tell people to live there instead, it's not that simple then, especially when all the jobs are here. So in a way, when you're in charge of like really managing a city and like governing a city, the number one policy you have to have for transportation is how do I keep the city moving while conserving as much space as possible, diba? How are you going to move people efficiently given that you can't really widen your roads anymore and you can't really there's only so much you can build in terms of skyways, flyovers, and everything. Because let's say maglagay ka ng skyway, isa pang flyover on a road, paano ko mag-exit, di ba? It's like can you build more ramps? Can you widen every single street in Metro Manila? After a while, you run out of space. So the real challenge for cities all over the world now is how do you use limited space to accommodate more and more people? And I think this is where the only way to do that really is you have to improve the experience for walking, for cycling, and for public transportation. You have to get people. Basically, we say it over and over, diba? You have to move people, not cars. You have to get people to choose. Instead of driving, you have to give them options. Give them good options for walking. Give them good options for cycling and for public transportation. And I think to not take up too much time, that's really what the concept of like bike lanes is. You've got to make it so that people like us, for instance, who ride on weekends, who are happy to ride when there are few cars on like Saturdays, Sundays, early in the morning. I think lots of people like to do it. Obviously, we love cycling. Obviously, it's fun, it's great, it's relaxing. But we need to make it so that people aren't afraid to do it every day, and that's how you reduce traffic. And that's why the bike lanes, in that way, when you view it that way, it's a way really to let people cycle every day safely without having to worry about like dying from being hit by cars. And I think I think it's anyway. I think we've had some successes. We've had some wins in terms of cycling and bike lanes in the Philippines. Obviously, there have been challenges and setbacks, but yeah, I think we can get into it over the course of the night.
Ayun. So, okay, just to make it clear, guys, yung bike lane, kasi this is based on all the comments we got from that post that we put up and yung bike lane hindi lang para sa ating mga recreational cyclists. It's for, the purpose is for people to get on their bikes and to be able to move around every day, 'di ba? So hindi
Yeah, yeah,
lang kasi some of the comments na parang hindi nila gets na there are other people who go to and from work na nakabike every day. It's not just
yeah, yeah,
your high, 'di ba, na road
yeah,
bike, mountain bike, yung mga kuya na yung mga
yeah,
workers, mga laborers na
yeah,
may dala pang mga tools sa backpack, sila from necessity 'di
yeah,
ba?
yeah.
Hindi naman So, just to make it clear, kasi yung ibang comments very, very focused on like
Oo.
recreational cycling So, yan, tong
Yeah.
si I Love My Wife
I
Cycling Club, he bikes to work daily sa frontliner. So, syempre, 'di ba?
Yeah,
Gets nila na okay, there's a there are days na okay for recreation, pero
yeah.
every day sila na nagra-ride.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
by
yeah.
definition, what is a bike lane supposed to? How do we define a bike lane? Ano ba siya
Right.
dapat?
Yeah, yeah. Sige nga
Ideal,
eh.
so ano bang ideal bike lane? So,
Sure. Yeah. I think maybe I can get into it. When you talk about yung ideal bike lane kasi, I mean like unang-una yung pinaka-concept ng bike lane is that yung mental model ko when I try to teach people this concept is that on the road basically you have three types of road users generally. I think this for me a useful model for thinking about a street. First you have mga pedestrians, the road users who go from let's say 0 to 10 kph. These are like the people who use the sidewalk, and the sidewalk is for that. So these are people like pedestrians, people na naka-wheelchair, yung mga
yeah.
electric wheelchair for mobility devices, even people jogging on the street. These are the people who aren't going so fast. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the motorized vehicles, diba? Like cars, motorcycles, vehicles that go routinely above, let's say, 25 kph. So I think in between, though, I think this is also where bikes get a little, parang, that's why parang ang daming galit sa bikers and people want to say, ano ka ba? Parang, are you a pedestrian? Are you a car? Because when you talk about bikes, and I would say even e-bikes, even e-scooters, they occupy that space in between. Let's say if you're a cyclist, usually if you're commuting, you go from between 10 to 25 kilometers per hour. Obviously, Paco, when he's racing, goes faster than that. But I think on the road, on the road when you're commuting, that's sort of the speed you sustain when you're biking to work. And again, Mars, when you mentioned earlier, you're right. People sometimes when you look at bike lanes, they think of like cyclists and they think of like their own use case. So I think for a lot of the guys that follow the show, we have a lot of roadies, lots of people that ride the trails. But you're right. I mean, there's also like laborers. There's also people who they don't have high-end bikes. They have mga BMX that only ride on one gear. We also see marami ring mga nanay parang like mga nanay na namamalengke, people bringing their kids to school. Actually, surprisingly, a lot of women end up using the bike lanes because because it gives them a feeling of safety because it allows them to have that space where because if you put bikes on the sidewalk with the pedestrians, you mix them with them, they go too fast for the pedestrians. They're at risk of hitting them. If you put bikes with the cars, they're a little too slow for the cars. The cars will hit them. Sila yung masasagi when the cars go faster. So you have to create that kind of third space in the road for those light. What I called it is like light mobility vehicles. So that covers bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters nga. And it really makes a better, much safer experience if they have their own space where they can move at that speed without conflict from faster or slower vehicles.
Ayan. So okay guys, it's not a matter of what form of what vehicle it's not a matter of what bike you're using or whatever. It's a matter of how fast everyone's going. So they just parang it's built to accommodate a certain category of vehicle. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. I
Diba?
think
So
that's a useful mental model for thinking about it.
so kanya-kanyang pace, may lane dito na pang mabilis, may lane dito na para sa pinakamabagal at yung bike lane natin para sa ka-pace nating lahat. So 10 to 25 kilometers per hour, pakisunod yung rules kasi hanggang 20 may
Ano
speed
ko si
limit dyan.
yung si Marco Sadsad, shout out yung halimaw ng Fairview, parang we know he goes faster also.
Ayan, Marco, pag nahuli ka ng MMDA dahil masyado kang mabilis sa bike lane. Ayan, so may tanong nga si Marco. I've been biking to work since 2009. During the pandemic lang na-recognize that biking to work is a viable option. So why not make cycling our primary mode of transportation? How hard would that be? How viable is it? Ano yung ng
Yeah.
possibility to make it? Yan.
Yeah.
Sige.
I think to respond to that a little, this is something I try to teach. I try to tell people a lot because, syempre, I think people, when I tell them that I bike to work every day, parang medyo hindi nila ini-expect kasi, they see me, parang savior boy, parang, studied in the States and the UK, tapos parang, wala kang kotse, nagbabike ka. Parang, and I think what's interesting, what I tell people kasi is when I bike to work, I don't feel it as a sacrifice kasi it's actually quite fun. It's really convenient. Hawak mo oras mo. But I think there are some beliefs that Filipinos have about cycling na medyo hindi pa parang myths din that need myth busting. Parang unang-una parang sabi nila, di ka ba parang napapawis sobra when you go to work mabaho ka. So that's number one. It's too hot. Number two, there's also the belief that it's really dangerous, and I think that one, there's some truth to it. But that's also why you need to have more bike lanes. But when you think about it, like all of these things are solvable problems, and kahit yung comment na mainit siya or nakakapagod siya, actually it's something that's also solved by bike lanes kasi mas napapawisan ka when you're stressed and you're more stressed when you're afraid of dying. So kung if you put people naman on the trails where there are no cars or like on a road na walang cars, if you have a sag car and you're not worried about getting hit, then you're happy to be on a bike. Parang napapagod yung katawan mo, but it doesn't feel stressful. It doesn't feel exhausting. So if you can create that kind of safety, then I feel like cycling can be viable for every day, even in the Philippines.
Ayan. At least, di ba, parang, especially ngayon, ang mahal ng gas. Mahal ng gas,
Yeah.
di ba?
Oh, yeah.
Compute nyo na lang na, alam mo yun, na kung magkano gagastos niyo sa gas, lagay nyo na lang sa bike fund nyo yun. Baka,
Yeah.
di ba?
Di ba?
Ayan. Sabi ni I Love My Wife Cycling Club, I agree. Nasabihan na ako minsan na kawawa ka naman, manager ka, pero nagbabike ka lang. Eh, alam ko nila kung magkano yung bike mo. Asawa mo ka, hindi alam magkano bike mo eh.
Grabe. Parang 'di ba ang baba ng tingin sa mga bikers, and I think that's something where medyo unfortunate nga siya because actually it's also worth talking about that side of cycling na parang mababa rin yung tingin sa bikers for a while because nga like sino ba yung nagbabike dati? Usually when you look at the kind of people that bike every day, yung traditional view natin, yung mga laborers, mga construction workers, ganun. Kaya sila nagbabike because they're the people who are already poorly served by public transportation. So, ang sama nga ng experience ng public transportation, ng commuting sa Philippines, parang siksikan sa bus, siksikan sa jeep, and they're already poorly served by that. So, yung bike na yung nagiging parang, yung tingin natin sa bike, parang kawawa nila sobra na parang dun sila napupunta sa bike as a last resort. But, I think it exists in that image, pero there's also the fact that when you actually discover cycling, it can be, really freeing, really liberating, really, really relaxing also. So medyo complex talaga yung image ng cycling sa Philippines.
O kasi hindi niyo ba naisip na kaysa mag-commute ka, pipila ka for a jeep or a bus, may pagsiksikan ka sa loob ng bus or ng jeep.
Yeah.
Especially ngayon, COVID, ang dami mong katabi.
Yeah.
For them, I guess, cycling, pag nakabike ka, at your own pace I don't have to line up. I don't have to sit next to someone I don't know for X number of hours. I get home faster. I'm healthier. Diba?
And when you think about it, when you're on a bike, parang at least parang kung napawisan ka, pawis mo yun instead of yung di ka nababahira ng pawis ng nakikipagsiksikan sa iyo.
Ito yan. Ito pa yan. Tama yan.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Ano natin? The $1 million question.
Sure.
Can we share the bike lane with other vehicles, motorcycles, tricycles? I've seen bike lanes with like cars and diba, alam mo yun? So
yeah,
on paper, ideally, how is it supposed to work?
Sige. I think maybe there are some examples you can find in other countries. Like I think in Norway or in Denmark, one of those countries, they actually allow mopeds, yung mga low-powered na motor scooters, to use the bike lanes. And but it's complex also kasi in those places you also have much lower speed limits and parang mas tutok sila dun sa enforcement ng speed. So when they let the mopeds use the bike lane, parang kampante ka na susunod sila sa speed limits. So I think at the root of it is if you can have reliable controls on the speed. Yung speed talaga yung pinaka it's really one of the most important variables you have to control for dun sa traffic management mo. Actually, parang in many parts of the Philippines, parang as long as parang mayos nating hulihin yung mga speeders, it would be much safer for cycle. It would be much safer for cycling. But I think maybe in this case, so siguro kung ganun, kung bigla nating papayagan yung mga motorcycle sa bike lane in the Philippine context, I would say it's certainly not ideal. I think maybe baka pwede pa yung mga light e-scooters. Yung mga light e-scooters, mga light e-bikes. Because some of those lighter vehicles, talagang hanggang 30 kph lang sila.
May limiter yun, di ba?
May limiter talaga yun.
Limiter talaga siya.
And actually, when you think about it, I mean, siguro this is one of my more controversial views. Parang once you see the wisdom of like a limiter dun sa mga e-bikes na yan, why don't we have a limiter on more types of vehicles? I mean, let's say unless professional driver ka, unless you're driving an ambulance or a fire truck, do you really need to go more than 30 kph? And siguro I'll stop muna there kasi baka mapaaway tayo sa comments.
Okay lang. But,
okay na.
Mas sa bike tong lahat na nanonood dito. So pwede natin sabihin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Ayan. So ito yung mga comments. Ayan. So what are the... So when bike lanes were implemented, diba? So you guys planned it out.
Yeah.
What was were there like guidelines, rules, laws put in place for the enforcers na as basis for, 'di ba? Kunyari traffic enforcers ako. Traffic
Yeah, yeah.
enforcer, pwede ko ba hulihin tong mga vehicles na above 25 kph na nasa bike lane or
Yeah,
nakapark sa bike lane? Is there a law or rule that
right. Yeah. I would say like when the bike lanes were implemented all over NCR, parang it's not like it's not like there were very specific laws put in aside from laws that already existed. Actually, technically on paper, maski walang barrier yan, bawal talaga mag-drive sa bike lane. Actually, it's been in the Pasig Traffic Code for years, for instance. But I would say like in the rest of the Philippines, I think looking beyond Pasig even, there's really I think a need na parang ma-educate din yung enforcers and yung mga traffic management officials because I think there's still honestly an issue na there are many people like in the traffic management profession, even in the transport planning profession, that don't believe in bike lanes the same way. I think it's still I think it's it's not, it doesn't make me exactly happy to say this, but then it's a reality I've been able to observe when you're into it because syempre parang if the rest of society parang medyo ngayon lang natin binabago yung pagtingin natin sa bike that it's not just for recreation, it's not just for poor people. I think that also goes the same for the people doing the transport policy and traffic enforcement. I think there's still a need to educate even the implementers of the policy. It's work in progress, and I think so one of the things we've been doing sa office namin is we've been having seminars sa mga traffic enforcers natin to teach them about what bike lanes are, kung bakit ba natin ginagawa, to show that actually many people are surprised even to find out that on a per pound for pound, parang meter for meter basis, yung bike lanes are much more efficient than mga car lanes even when you're moving people. Kasi, on a bike, siguro kung 3 meters yung width ng space, that's the size of one car lane, you can move maybe 1,000 cars per hour tops. But you can move mga more than 3,000 bikes in the same time. So it's really a more efficient use of space. Dun tayo babalik sa concept na you have to use the space more efficiently.
yes? Because I remember reading it somewhere. Now there's a group of people who did like a survey, so they stationed themselves in various areas of the metro,
Yeah,
and they just counted how many bikes were passing for
yeah,
rush hour, like 4 hours, parang ganon. And I
yeah,
think they
yeah,
counted something like 30, 40,000 bicycles
yeah.
in the span of 4 hours. So, yung mobility nga, mas efficient siya pag, like even, di ba, ako magbabike na lang ako kasi magkotse kasi mas mabilis talaga eh.
Yeah.
Di ba? Tsaka
And I
mas
think the interesting thing is that parang everyone's always like, especially when you get to talk to people, when you have these conversations with people kung bakit ka ba nagbabike, sometimes you hear people say na parang wala namang gumagamit ng bike lane na yun eh. And I think maybe if you're sitting in traffic, when you look over at the bike lane, wala kang nakikita eh. Because the bikes have already gone past you kasi di nga
Oo,
sila na traffic eh.
nalaman na.
Oh,
Yes. Lalo na kung si Paco, mabilis.
lalo na kung si Paco, di ba?
Speaking of yung paglagay ng bike lane, assuming na ma-implement natin yung mga rules na kailangan for the bike lane to be a bike lane, a proper
Yeah,
functioning
yeah.
bike lane. Ano yung process na, kasi hindi ka naman pwede maglagay ng bike lane sa 100% ng lahat ng roads and
Right, yeah.
avenues sa city.
True.
So, paano nyo dinidetermine yung mga roads na kailangan yung lagyan ng bike lane? Is it the amount of traffic na dumadaan or
Yeah.
accessibility lang to the main road?
I think that's a great question to ask because I think syempre you have to be a little scientific also about where you choose to put a bike lane. For me, I think the most important criteria talaga is that if you're putting bike lanes for safety, then you need to where you put the bike lanes is determined by where safety is an issue in addition to feasibility. So I think for me, if the concept of bike lanes is to protect cyclists from fast motor vehicle traffic, that means you should prioritize mga roads na medyo wide. Let's say, I think it's correct, for instance, to put protected bike lanes dun sa EDSA, sa C5, for instance, kasi that's where you have the cars going really fast. They're very wide also, so medyo intense yung swerving minsan ng kotse. So you need to really protect the cyclists there. Again, in addition to the bike lanes, you also need to protect them dun sa intersections ng mga streets na yun because it becomes really important. I think, on the other hand, though, if you're looking at yung mga medyo narrow streets, mga eskinita, I think mga roads na that are very old, and really tight, for instance, I think for some of those you don't need bike lanes there because since they're so tight, the cars don't move very fast there. Eh. Kasi I think sometimes you hear people say na, yung mga roads natin hindi naman designed for bikes. Why are you trying to push it? But if you look back, look at the streets of Binondo, di ba? Or like Intramuros. Those streets were not designed for cars. I mean, they were designed for calesas, for pedestrians. So I think, and even bicycles, actually nauna pa dun yung bisikleta kaysa sa kotse. So I think for streets like that, na medyo historical, medyo mga mas narrow, you don't need to have bike lanes there as long as your speed management policy is correct. But I think maybe this also goes to, but I think an important caveat here is that sometimes you have streets which are not so wide, pero mga nadadaanan pa ng mga trucks. Eh. I think for those, especially if there are no good alternative access streets, then I think it's important to protect cyclists and pedestrians there. Like if it's the only direct route, if there are already many trucks, many heavy vehicles, then you still need to have protection facilities for cyclists.
Yun.
Yeah.
Oh, magte-training na si Paco.
Ayun na, training na.
De. So ayan, so ano to? Kasi nga I think also does driver education come when does it come into play? Like syempre we're just like as you were saying, Amsterdam and other countries like the Netherlands and other countries, they started in the 70s, diba? So that's a good like, diba? Parang tayo, we're just like at the very, very beginning. How does it progress now? Ano yung next steps? Kasi ngayon parang nandiyan na sila eh. So what's the usual next step after laying out the infrastructure, the bike lane? So we have it. How do we move forward here?
Right. I think Mars, it's kind of a difficult question because if you try to look at all the different ways you can go forward, parang ang daming ways talaga eh. But I think I think it was really a good first step, as you said, that we were able to put the bike lanes in the first place, just to show people that it could be done. Eh. But I think there are a number of things we still have to change. Eh. Like I think, for instance, number one, it would be nice na for the bikers, for the people who cycle. I think it's really important for if you're a biker that it's good to get organized, to organize with other fellow cyclists, and like if for those of you who are more active and are more positive about having dialogues with your government, with the LGUs, it's good to join groups in cycling that are more civic minded. Shout out dun sa Pasig Cyclist Coalition, sa Manila Moves, which si Marco Sadsad is also a member of. I think number one, we always say that aside from voting, aside from paying your taxes, it's good to be involved in some kind of civic goals like that. And that's number one. I think some other goals nga, as you mentioned, driver education is important. I think we need to teach our drivers also. Sa mga driving test pa lang, sad to say, minsan you hear about mga driving instructors. As in talagang sasabihan sa mga driving students na kung may makita silang cyclist or tricycle, minsan the instruction talaga is kinahan mo yan para tumabi. So, I think sa mga driver education, minsan mali talaga eh. And that stuff has to change. There was a video recently of like mga bus drivers and truck drivers in Brazil na for them to experience kung ano yung feeling ng biker pag pininahin sila ng truck, they make them ride a stationary bike and make the truck drive right next to them. So they're actually in no danger. But I think it's important to teach people that feeling also. For instance, I wouldn't be opposed for them to learn that. So that's another one. Driver education is another one. I think for maybe to stop at a third, the other important policy area we need to focus on is land use. Because one thing that makes bike lanes so hard to execute in parts of the Philippines is because yung traditional model ng building sa atin, di ba? If you're on the street side, usually yung parking mo nasa harap, di ba? Di ba? It's like you drive onto the sidewalk, and actually sometimes kinakain ng parking ng mga shops, mga businesses yung sidewalk. Eh. And actually in many countries that's illegal. And actually technically under the building code that's illegal, pero parang pinayagan lang dito forever. And I think that's another area that's also important. Eh. Because if you have no sidewalk, parang it's not only is it bad for pedestrians, it's also worse for the bike lanes because you have to make it so that cars drive into the bike lane to access it. So I think parang it's not such a satisfying answer that there's a lot we need to work on, but there kind of is.
Hindi, kasi I remember before, it's, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a Filipino, it's a thing na, like I
Yeah.
remember when C6 first opened and they had this whole publicity thing about the bike lane from, 'di ba, end to end.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
months, may vendors na,
Yeah.
may,
Yeah.
'di ba,
Yeah.
may ano na. So usually that's the kind of thing that I guess you guys have to deal, like we all have to deal with, 'di ba, na
Right.
how to properly, you know, manage, 'di ba? It's one thing to put it there. It's another thing to keep it, as bike lane-ish as possible. 'Di
Right.
ba?
Yeah. Yeah. Tama.
'Di ba? Go
I
ahead.
think that's correct. I'll get in the comment of see I love my wife cycling club, and parang in some cases it really is a political will thing, where I think but I think maybe again I'll go back to what I said earlier about civic engagement. It's not just about the leaders. I think sometimes uh like it's also important for society to also educate the people in power, that we need to kind of show also that there's a demand for the bike lanes to be managed well. I think if there bike lanes we're not happy with, I think like what you did. I mean, if you're not happy about a certain policy, it's important to call it out. It's important to tell people that there's a right way to do bike lanes, and that you will be rewarded for doing it the right way, and that it won't be so nice if you don't do it the right way. So, but yun nga, parang I think maybe I don't think it's unfair naman to say that it's a Filipino thing kapag medyo parang nasisira yung bike lanes ng poor maintenance, ng poor management. Because I mean, I think we have to recognize nga that there's stuff about our culture that isn't nice. You have to name it before you can change it, di ba?
Yes, tama yan.
Yeah.
Ito pa. So now na, 'di ba, parang this is like step one, phase one of bike lanes in the Philippines. So we spent, 'di ba, X amount of
Yeah.
money to put out the bike lanes in Metro Manila, Cebu, Davao.
Yeah.
Is there uh an assessment? Is there an assessment period for, okay, this bike lane works, this bike lane doesn't, we should make the, di ba, yung parang after a few months, now that kasi before when the bike lane started, pandemic, traffic was pretty loose.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
di ba? So now that the situation is changing, now that there are more cars on the road, do you do an is there like an assessment afterwards na after X number of months, okay, let's revisit it and let's see which bike lanes we should make diba?
Yeah.
Wider, narrower, take
Right.
out. So is that a thing? Is that a part of the plan?
Right. Here's the thing, Marze. I think I'll be completely frank and honest here. That it's not something that Philippine governments and are used to doing when it comes to projects. Usually, kasi in general for most types of projects, not transportation, hindi rin ganun kaganda yung culture natin of post-impact assessment. I think and I think maybe again like it's a problem din. I'll say it's a Filipino thing. I think I think in our culture we're not really that used to parang non-personal feedback. Sometimes you can say something's not work. We should be able to say something's not working out without people feeling like they're being attacked. Diba? I think sometimes you make a good bet. Sometimes you make a bet. Sometimes it doesn't work out like you plan. But then you come together as a team, as a government and society to try to make it better. Diba? But I think here, kasi sometimes it's really hard to have that kind of culture because you're still trying to make people less afraid of criticism. And we've been trying to do that in at least in our work in Pasig. And I think one of the things where we want to change it is when you do that post-impact assessment, what do you prioritize, diba? Because if you're going to say na parang, oh, we put this bike lane X months ago, but then the travel speed for cars is still bad, so we have to remove the bike lane. Then I think sometimes that isn't really a good measurement. Do we judge bike lanes by how they can decongest car traffic? I think maybe if you have a post-impact assessment, you also need to have a good framework for what you judge it on, diba? And I think maybe that's still a battle we're fighting right now. Now, if you have a bike lane, you don't want to judge it by how it impacts people who don't use it, diba? I think you want to judge how it helps people reach opportunities they couldn't have before. How meron kang, for instance, may mga bata that can bike to school independently kasi may bike lane. And I think we need to be able to get better at recognizing stuff like that, and like evaluating based on things like that.
Nice. Ayan. Sige, wait. Let's go back. Let's go to the questions kasi malulunod na tayo sa dami ng
Sige,
questions.
sige.
Ano to? Some people commented on this. Is there priority for any type of vehicle on the road? Do some vehicles are some vehicles more prioritized when they're on the road? Is that any truth to that? I mean,
Yeah. You know what, Mars? I think maybe this is where I can get a little frank, diba? I think in the Philippines, lots of people call our culture car-centric, and I think really sometimes, yeah, I think it's not an unfair thing to say. I think we're still a really car-centric kind of culture. I think it shows na parang, talaga parang you're not really considered grown up, or parang di ka mayaman unless may kotse ka, diba? Parang kung nakabike ka at di ka nakakotse. I think a bunch of people in the comments have said, parang ang baba ng tingin sa'yo, parang manager ka, tas bike ka lang, diba? So I think maybe it kind of shows in how our policy and how the enforcement and implementation come out sometimes, where I think it's kind of hardwired into people to say na parang okay, we have to prioritize cars, we have to judge our success by how good the car drivers are feeling, not recognizing that you have a transportation that needs to take many more things into account. But of course, we need to change that. Diba? I mean, like there's lots of literature that shows na if you prioritize pedestrians, if you prioritize cyclists, if you prioritize public transportation, then it gets better even for the car drivers. Then, but I think maybe yun nga if you do the opposite, if you prioritize the car drivers ahead of everybody else, it gets worse for everybody, even the car drivers. So I think that's a mentality we still need to work on changing.
nice. Okay.
Tingin ko rin bilang dagdag ko lang kasi since nandun tayo sa topic ng culture ng mga siklista sa Pilipinas. Tingin ko ang tamang kasi nakikita ko from afar dahil nandito ako sa Portugal. Ang nagiging mentality usually ng mga siklista laban sa mga motorized vehicles, laban sa mga drivers na syempre pinaglalaban nila yung right nila na magkaroon ng space sa road, magkaroon ng safety pagdating sa pagbibisikleta sa labas. Pero usually, ang trend ng mga nakikita nating mentality ng mga siklista, us versus them. Di ba? Yun yung tingin ko isang detrimental na attitude pagdating sa culture. Kasi ang nangyayari, dahil nakakotse ka, kalaban ka. Di ba? Inaabangan mo yung magsuswerve. As if yung nag-swerve sa harap mo, siya rin yung nag-swerve 10 blocks from now. Na,
right,
diba? Parang generalized na yung nangyayari na masama lahat ng nakamotor, masama lahat ng taxi, jeep, bus, whatever. Yeah. And tingin ko, at some point, dadating tayo dun sa moment ng cycling revolution sa Pilipinas na kailangan nating i-address yung mga ganong klaseng drivers pagdating sa safety ng mga cyclists. Pero, tingin ko lang, suggestion ko lang sa ating lahat na mga siklista, ang tamang mentality pagdating sa pag-push ng mga policies, pagdating sa pagbabike, sa bike lanes, bike safety, is yung safety. Kasi yun yung number one na priority mo parati. Kaya maraming ayaw lumabas ng nakabike kahit may bike sila. Kasi at some point, feeling nila masasagi sila ng bus, madadapa sila dahil may butas sa bike lane, may nakapark bigla, may nag-swerve, di ba?
So, ka sa grill, ganun.
Oo, yun na shoot. Nipis ng gulo mo, tapos
mo yun,
tabling ka. Pero yun yung tingin kong isang mentality na mas tama. Kasi pwede tayong mag-ubos ng oras sa pag-uusap ng tungkol sa karapatan ng bawat tao pagdating sa paggamit ng daan, kung may tax o walang tax. Hindi naman yun yung pinag-uusapan. Ang pinag-uusapan natin dapat is mabigyan natin ng option, and isa rin ito sa mga pinag-uusapan kanina na dapat i-prioritize yung cyclist pagdating sa daan dahil ito yung mas nakakabuti. Pero tingin ko wala pa tayo dun sa point na pwede nating pag-usapan na mas okay mag-bike kaysa kotse. Alam naman natin lahat yun, kaya nga tayo nagbabike. Pero, tingin ko mas healthy para sa ating lahat, as a society, as a culture, na pinoprovide natin is yung option na pwede kang mag-bike. Kung gusto mo
Yeah.
magkotse, walang problema. Magkotse ka. Pero kung gusto mo at the same time na mag-bike din, ito yung option na bike and safe din siya. Diba? And tingin ko
That's
mas
true.
marami tayong maingganyo na mag-bike kung gusto nila sa ganong klaseng mentality. Hindi yung bike kami, kotse ka. O bike kami, motor ka. So dyan ka. Diba? So yun yung kasi lahat din naman ang nagbabike nakaranas na mag-drive siguro ng kotse, karamihan, di ba? And hindi naman siya parang isang enough identification para magkaroon ng gera laban sa mga nagbibisikleta at mga nagde-drive, di ba? So yun lang yung tingin kong isang mas magandang option natin bilang culture. Kasi tama si Anton kanina, yung culture talaga eh. Parang as much as kaya nating and gusto nating kopyahin yung Amsterdam or London or New York sa bike policies nila, iba pa rin yung culture natin. Iba pa rin yung pagbabike, iba yung identification natin sa mga bisikleta natin. Yun lang naman. Gusto ko i-dagdag.
Yeah. Oo. Yeah.
Ito maganda.
I think, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Sure, yeah. No, I think totoo yun eh. Like, I think medyo, may pagkakaiba talaga sa culture. And I think maybe, you're right. I think Paco makes a good point eh. That, pag tayo, let's say for instance, may motorista sa daan, medyo nag-swerve, kinat tayo. I think maybe it's important to realize na in the moment, alam naman natin may sadyang may kupal, di ba? May sadyang may kupal, in the moment you might be angry. Pero at the end of the day, parang, literally and figuratively, parang pinagbabangga tayo lahat ng isang sistema na hindi na kailangan pang baguhin, na marami pang flaws. So I think in some ways, I think we don't want to demonize naman all drivers in the same way na parang mga drivers parang di naman lahat ng cyclist gempoy eh. Na sometimes when you see a cyclist biking in a certain way, I think we understand naman not all drivers are out there trying to kill cyclists. And not all cyclists pag let's say hindi sila in one way pag gumigit na sila or lumalabas sa bike lane, sometimes they're doing it kasi may manhole dun sa bike lane na medyo malalim, di ba? So I think konting empathy lang talaga is important eh. But I think I want to react also to yung comment ni Manila Move si parang Aldrin. Also like a great partner in civic advocacy for cycling. I think the thing about culture kasi is that yung culture kasi natin is not just about educating people, but it's also shaped by the infrastructure we have, di ba? I think if we have bike lanes, if we have sidewalks, then unti-unti nababago din yung culture eh. Parang I think pag pagpunta natin sa mall for instance, if we go to a mall and we see na yung bike parking disente, hindi siya tinatabi sa basura, parang kitang-kita ng lahat, then that also changes people's mentality about cycling. So I think it's important also na two-way street yun eh. We need to change the culture to make the infrastructure changes possible. But when you also change the infrastructure, parang nakakadulot din siya ng change sa culture natin eh. It's a system that I think works very well when they cooperate.
Yan. Actually, maganda tong suggestion ni Marco Sadsa din. Nakahanap siya ng loophole eh. Companies should incentivize bike commuters. Dapat may bike allowance at bike loans. O, diba? Nagawa niya ng yung bago niyang bike.
Yeah.
Yan.
Okay, that's true.
Sabi niyo yan, para may bago kayong bike lahat.
Nako, para at least si Marco, para at least yung company na niya yung babayad sa next upgrade niya.
Diba?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense eh, because in the United Kingdom, may scheme sila yung tawag dun cycle scheme eh, where yung national government talaga nila, they really incentivize you to buy a bike instead. As in maski employee ka ng maski anong company, the government will give you an interest-free loan na payable by salary deduction to buy a bike. And pwedeng any bike actually, parang hindi lang siya yung tipong utilitarian commuter bike. I think pwede ka nga bumili ng mga mas high-end na e-bike. Let's say I think parang a friend of mine in the UK bought like a specialized Diverge yung carbon, parang hindi yung pang-alloy na entry level. So I think we need to have incentives like that. And I think companies, for instance, let's say company ka, meron kang isang parking space na you can fit the car of one employee there. Pero kung ginawa mo siyang bike rack, and instead you can have mga 12, mga 15 cyclists, edi nakatipid ka pa sa parking ng employees mo. And I think if that saves you money, you can pass on the savings to your employees, then it becomes nicer for them pa. Binigyan mo pa sila ng mas magandang parking.
Binigyan mo din silang lahat ng idea.
Ang idea, oo, exactly.
Baka by Monday, lahat na nanonood, mag-strike na humingi na ng bike loan tsaka bike allowance.
Why not, di ba? Why not? Yeah. Kung yung mga ibang jobs natin may company car, why can't you have a company bike, di ba?
Mas mura pa. Well,
Mura pa.
Depende.
Pero
Depende sa bike.
yung 10 S-Works na tarmac, mas mura pa rin sa kotse.
Exactly. Ayun,
Diba?
yun. Yeah.
Oo.
Ano yung pinaka-popular nating kotse ngayon? Yung, let's say, the best-selling car in the Philippines, Fortuner, di ba? Siguro yun nga, maski tarmac na pinaka-high-end, parang, I think it's like at least 2 or 3 tarmacs pa before you get to a Fortuner, yung pinaka-low-end na Fortuner.
Oh, diba? Tsaka at least yun, if you're a company, it's cheaper pa for you. Kasi nga, hindi ka nagbibigay ng kotse, di ba?
Ito, yung si I Love My Wife, ethos mas mura sa kotse. Ay, nako.
Iba
talaga pa.
Depende kung anong kotse.
Depende kung anong kotse.
Grabe, yan yung talagang kung sinabihan ka na parang manager ka, tapos nakabike ka lang, tapos ethos dala mo. Hoy!
Di ba?
So, teka Mars, kailangan natin tanongin si Anton kung anong mga bikes niya since tingin ko nandun na tayo eh.
Sure. Yeah.
What bike do you ride?
Okay, so di pa ako
sa lahat ng guests namin who come on the show.
Yeah, sure. I think I think number one, number one parang I practice na, and I advise this to everybody, fully declare your bikes. My wife also bikes. She knows how much all of my bikes cost. It's a good practice. It makes for a happy marriage. I highly advise this.
Yeah.
So I have 3 bikes right now actually. Yung pinaka ginagamit ko actually is I use a Surly Pack Rat. So actually mahilig kasi ako sa mga steel bikes. I think it's a really practical bike kasi it's a bike that's designed para sa loaded touring. So I have a big basket in front. Andun lahat ng gamit ko, parang trunk ng kotse ko. My second most used bike is a Velo Orange Neutrino. It's like yung bakal na mini Velo ni Velo Orange. So So I really like itong mga steel bikes na pang touring, ganun. I mean, just because I find it really practical, kasi commuter ako eh. I don't really race so much, but I really like, kahit mga long ride, I really like urban riding. But for me, like, yung number one consideration sa cycling is commuting eh. So I'm really a fan of these mga practical steel bikes. Yung third bike ko is a Brompton. So syempre parang it's like yung Brompton, also a popular folding bike. It's I really like a bike I love a lot. I just don't use it as much these days. But it's a bike na I don't think I'll ever sell it kasi medyo naging rare na yung Bromptons eh.
Ito na rin, tanong na rin natin since we asked this sa lahat ng guests. Coffee ride, what do you order sa coffee shop?
Yeah. Usually I get usually medyo basic ako, parang Americano or cold brew. So I drink black coffee, I drink mga 3 to 4 coffees a day usually.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
Ayan. Ito pa, sige, balik tayo sa
Sure.
mga questions nila. Ayan. Alvin Halushos, makapag-inquire na nga sa office tomorrow kung pwede mag-loan tayo.
Yeah!
Yan, go!
I mean, let's say kung office ka, parang let's say, I think more people should ask this with their offices, di ba? Kung I think yung office mo parang nag-offer ng loan para sa Vios, para sa Fortuner, ganun, you should ask them na parang pwede ko bang pag-loan ko na lang yung S-Works ko? Why not?
Di ba? Wala pang service. Wala pang yung periodic maintenance, wala pang di ba?
May periodic upgrade nga lang parang.
Periodic.
Ano pa ba? Guys, kung may mga questions kayo for Anton,
Yeah.
na lang sa comments. Kung may
Sure, yeah.
Ayan.
Yeah. Although I have to say na parang shoutout din sa Specialized, especially sa Specialized Pasig. I just saw your cap ngayon, parang you've got like a Specialized hat on. Siyempre parang dun sa mga Savior Boys, we love the Specialized guys.
Of course.
Yeah.
Shout out to Specialized Philippines.
Yeah.
I love my wife's cycling club. Our office before when I was pushing for cycling, nag-provide naman ng shower. Ay, malaking bagay din yan.
Yeah. I think that's really important eh. Na, kung walang shower sa office mo, let's say, for some jobs you can get away na parang palit top lang, palit shirt. then sometimes that's all right. But if you need to shower, I think the offices, minsan kasi mahal talaga mag-construct ng bagong shower. So kung ganun, maybe the offices can partner sa, let's say, Anytime Fit. Kung may malapit na gym, ganun, they can offer you, kasi some gyms, meron silang, yung ibang gyms may special rates sila na shower only. So maybe at the very least, you can offer that.
Eto, sige, sagutin na. I love my wife cycling club. Exclusive po ba ang bike lane sa bike?
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is going to be different, based on different cities' policy. Pero at least I think what is becoming good practice is yung bike lane, you can allow their bikes, yung acoustic bikes. Pero I think dapat pwede rin yung mga e-bikes, mga e-cargo bikes. I think these days nakikita natin yung mga lead acid na mga mini e-trikes, for instance. I think especially if you go to mga medyo yung area natin sa Pasig na malapit sa City Hall, you see a lot more of those e-bikes. I think it's good to have those also kasi mabagal naman yung mga yun. And you need to have and actually parang yung mga e-bikes na yan, especially the cheaper e-bikes, they're parang primary transportation siya ng mga senior citizens at mga PWD. Kasi if you're let's say if your body if you're not that strong sa body mo, it's very hard for many of them to use motorcycles kasi ang lakas ng torque. So the feedback we get is kaya pinipili nila yung mga e-bikes. So it becomes like a way of becoming more equitable and more inclusive kung payagan mo silang gumamit ng bike lanes. Kasi at least hindi na sila parang mapapressure dun sa main na road na kasama nila yung mga motor vehicles.
So ito yung e-bikes na may bubong, no? Yung parang hindi yung e-bicycle, hindi may pedal assist.
Hindi ito yung parang yung Turbo Creo, hindi ganoon parang.
So e-bike is yung bike na parang may bubong, tatlo yung gulong, tapos ano yan.
Yeah, actually, many people have different opinions on that type of vehicle. Pero para sa akin, you know what? I'm okay with them because yun nga, parang kadalasan yung gumagamit doon. If you actually see who uses them, a lot of them are mga nanay, mga senior, mga PWD. Siguro naman, I think maybe, do we need to have a better licensing and registration scheme for them? I think that's fair naman. But at the same time, I don't think dapat siyang pagbawalan or dapat i-discourage. Kasi I think maganda nga na nagbibigay sila ng mobility option dun sa mga siguro hindi nga nakagagamit ng motorcycle.
Yan. Tsaka yung speed naman, as if naman kayo hindi niyo ino-overtake yung mga naka-e-bike na gano'n. I'm sure lahat kayo in-overtake nyo na nag-overtake kayo ng mga ganong e-bikes. Okay lang ako, gay, okay lang ako sa kanya.
I think yung audience mo, Mars, I think nakaka-overtake nga sila ng mga e-bike. No question.
Kaya nyo overtake yung mga e-bike na yan. Ito pa. So, ang motorcycle ba, can we share it with motorcycles? The bike lane?
Yeah. I think mga motorcycles actually, yung preference ko actually would be number one, I think, like I said, the most important is yung general speed control mo sa kalsada. I think in general, actually in the traffic code, it's interesting because if you interpret the land transportation code very strictly, ito yung pinaka land transportation law natin sa buong Pilipinas, then most roads in the Philippines actually have an effective speed limit of between 20 and 40 kph. If you interpret it strictly, kung walang posted speed limit. So in that sense, kung may motorcycle din naman, they really shouldn't be going that fast anyway. But at the same time, I would say na parang it wouldn't be my first choice na isama yung motorcycle sa bike lane. Because I think, number one, yung motorcycle, yung bike, syempre, parang while we're riding, mas malakas yung breathing natin And kung nasa harap mo yung tambucho, it's also not so pleasant. Kung e-bikes, parang okay pa kasi wala naman silang exhaust. But if you have a lot of motorcycles in the bike lane, it doesn't become a very nice experience for cyclists. Okay sana kung nasa tabi sila. If they're in the part of the road next to the bikes, at least it's not right in your face. Medyo big difference na yun When you look at yung impact ng air pollution, for instance, even a few meters, even like half a meter makes a difference. Because you see, when you do studies of air pollution, yung mga bata, mas malakas talaga yung exposure nila just because they're shorter. Mas malapit sila sa tambucho So it really becomes an issue for the health of kids also. Even that much, that small of a distance makes a big difference na
So, to answer I Love My Wife Cycling Club's question, can we share to the motorcycle? No.
Siguro maybe, probably kung nakamotor ka, please don't. Even though, let's say, maski walang barrier yan, if you're on a motorcycle, baka tiisin mo na lang, just don't do it, man.
Yeah. Are we allowed to tell them to get out of the bike lane? Is it, ayan, are we entitled to the, kasi may tumawag sa, and wag daw akong entitled na parang, okay, are we entitled to our bike lane na exclusive to us?
Yeah, you know what? I think again, this is something where we need to. I think we need to change a lot of the culture and a lot of the law pa in the Philippines. And I think maybe in many places, we still need to put up more signs and have more educational material. Na yung bike lane, para sa bike talaga yun eh. I think generally, we should be educating people. Kasi I think even if the enforcers sometimes feel differently, totoo naman na para sa bike talaga yun eh. Actually, may joke nga kami sa group namin na parang yung mga cars, pag sumasampa sila sa bike lane, feeling bike sila kasi dalawa lang naman yung gulong nila na nasa bike lane eh. When they get on the bike lane. But that doesn't make it right? So, yeah. But I think maybe, you know what, if you have the energy for it, ako kasi parang personally, I don't usually parang hindi ko inaaway yung mga nasa bike lane. I'm not saying not to do it. I think more people should be doing it. Usually it's my wife na nang away, tapos parang pinaback up ko siya eh, na to tell the cars to get out of the bike lane. And I think it's good for people to do it. If you can do it nicely, even better. Kasi yung iba sa atin parang mas magaling yung social skills nila. If there's a way you can do it without being angry, then I think that's a real talent, and go ahead and do it.
Yan. Ano to? Teka, balikan ko yung questions. Nadi-distract ako eh. So,
Sige.
Glenn, Paco, ikaw muna magtanong.
Ano nga bang... Wala, hindi ako makarelate eh. Walang bike lane.
Wala bang bike lane dyan sa inyo?
Bike lane sa Portugal?
Dito sa... Usually, pagdating mo sa mga towns, kasi ang kaibahan naman kasi dito, 10 million lang yung population nila eh. So, kumpara mo sa 14 million na nasa Metro Manila lang, nasa isang lugar, ito 10 million buong Portugal. So, yung mga towns nila, far apart, meron ka mga national road going across ng towns na wala naman masyadong dumadaan kasi may access sila sa expressway. Pero usually, pagdating sa mga small towns, meron silang pinoprovide na maliit na, hindi siya bike lane na, may mga towns na may bike lane talaga. Pero maraming, mas nakikita ako na parang walking and running lanes na pwede yung bike
right, yeah.
kung gusto mong mag-bike. Pero
parang jogging trail, ganun.
Pero pagdating mo sa Lisbon or Porto, yung mga main cities nila, doon may mga bike lanes talaga. Kasi syempre mas maraming tao, mas maraming nagko-commute to work. Kasi pag tulad dito sa lugar namin, pag dito ka nakatira, pwede ka maglakad papunta sa trabaho mo eh, kasi maliit lang eh. Kung gusto mo talagang magtipid or hindi gumamit ng kotse, madaling maglakad. Pero yung pagdating sa training, andaling pumunta sa bundok or sa mga back roads, mga country roads na wala namang dumadaan usually.
Yeah.
And yun nga, yung sabi mo, hindi naman sila exempted sa existence ng mga kupal na driver. Siguro mga 1 out of 10 cars na dumaan talagang walang pakialam. Pero dahil konti lang yung dumadaan, konti lang na-encounter mo na gano'n. Diba?
I guess yun nga, kasi mas konti nga yung tao, mas konti din naman yung kupal, di ba? So, kung same
relative.
Kasi in some other countries, like I remember, I think I was in Paris, in France, matayo ka lang sa bike lane, masisigawan ka ng mga nagbabike. Alam mo yung tumatawid ka lang sa road, so may sidewalk, may bike lane. Yung mabagal ka lang tumawid, sisigawan ka talaga ng cyclist eh. Or like in Singapore na yung bike lane nila katabi mo expressway na, 'di ba? So yun lang, at least doon alam nila na naintindihan bike lane pang bike.
Yeah.
Yung lane mo.
Although I think Mars, to respond to that shortly lang, I think minsan kasi may mga bikers din na pag may pedestrian sa bike lane, especially dito sa atin, parang minsan pinagsasabihan yung pedestrian. And I think maybe that's one aspect na parang sana unawaan din ng mga bikers na kahit yung sidewalks natin dito pangit na minsan
Uh,
nasa kalsada sila or nasa bike lane sila kasi minsan mas maganda nga yung pavement ng mismong road kaysa sa sidewalk. So when you see a pedestrian in the bike lane, I think for me parang again like we try to have a little empathy. Habang in progress pa tayo trying to change our world, trying to change our streets, wag muna natin parang i-burden yung pedestrian na bumalik din sa sidewalk lalo na kung may disability sila tapos baka mas okay pa sa bike lane. So I think yun lang. We're still this whole work is still a work in progress.
Ayan, sabi ni Chris Ang, Pasig cyclist here, no questions. Just wanted to say good job on the Capital Commons intersection. Sana ma-apply din in more areas around the city. Magandang intersection.
Thank you so much. I'm really proud of that. It is a really good win-win partnership. I'm really, really proud of what we were able to do there together with shout out to Ortigas and Company who actually paid for the whole thing. I think it was a really good a really good cooperative project.
And so if you guys aren't familiar with that Pasig Capital Commons intersection, may bike lane tapos may space sa harap ng intersection sa na for cyclists. So
Yeah.
color-coded, pag green, dyan yung cyclists, tapos sa likod yung cars. So medyo siya compared to most like actually siya lang ba? Isa lang ba 'yon? Isa pa lang siya.
Isa pa lang siya, but we're working on making that same kind of treatment on other intersections kasi yung tawag kasi doon bike box and actually it's there para ma-formalize yung behavior din na ginagawa ng cyclists forever. Usually parang if you're a cyclist, you want to go ahead of the cars dun sa mga stoplight And I think maybe for cyclists you do it not just to get ahead. I mean, although you can, diba? I mean, you can filter in and get ahead, but it's also safer even for the cars kasi at least pag nag-green na and nakita mo yung lahat ng cyclists sa harap they can get ahead a little bit. And then kasi yung mga cyclists pag green na gigilid din yun usually to the bike lane on the other side of the intersection So it's actually safer for bikes and for cars if the bikes do that. Ginagawa lang natin formal.
Ito pa yung isa. This is based on all the comments that we were all discussing on that one post that we were that everyone was so into last Monday.
Yeah.
That whole share the road thing, does it apply to bike lanes? Are we supposed, di ba? Kasi yung iba hindi nila because some of the comments were like, no, bike lane is just for bikes, like what most people are saying. Some people are like, no, share the road. But parang that whole thing went back and forth na, no, it's a bike lane. Am I supposed to be sharing that with everyone else? Or, di ba, what's that? Just to make it clear lang to whoever's watching, to whoever's going to be watching this after. So share the road. Ano bang explaining? Does it apply? Or is share the road just? I know share the road is like a campaign by Ford, like Ford Motors, to encourage motorists to be aware of cyclists. It was the other way around. So does it apply to cyclists?
Here's the thing, again, I think on that issue, I think there are parts of that issue where I'll have to exercise my right to remain silent. But but I think generally, if you want to talk about the concept of share the road, someone made a really good analogy. Na parang when you say share the road, you don't want to say share in the same way that let's say halimbawa parang nasa school ka and the bully tells you to share your lunch money, diba? I mean, that's not the kind of sharing you want to do, right? I mean, when you say share the road, I mean, it's really, again, going back to the concept of empathy, diba? It's like if we see, kung cyclist tayo, if we see a pedestrian in the bike lane, because the sidewalk sucks, then i-share naman natin, diba? If you're a driver, then you see a cyclist, let's say kung nasa medyo gitna siya kasi for whatever reason, let's say may nakita siyang lubak na hindi mo nakita, maybe that's the case. So share lang, wag mo siyang pinahan, don't be an asshole to him. And yun lang, I think it's really about just having empathy for your fellow road users, but also I think with the concept na if you have great power, Spider-Man, diba? It's like yung sequel to yung Spider-Verse is coming out again, diba? But the famous line from Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility. So if you're a cyclist, you have more power than a pedestrian. If you have a motorcycle, you have more power than a cyclist. Usually, if you have a car, you have more power than all of those people. So parang when you're the more powerful thing, ito na kung nasa car ka, may aircon ka naman, your brakes are stronger. It's easier for you to slow down. So I mean, wala namang kawalan sa'yo to be a little nicer on the road, di ba?
Ayan. Kasi those were the little things that we noticed reading through all the comments on that post na, nga, parang the whole share the road thing, the whole, are they allowed, ganyan. So at least now you guys have a better idea of how it's supposed to be on the road. So responsible din naman sila, pero at the same time, empathy nga, parang it works both ways. Hindi naman pwedeng di ba? Parang kayo lang yung aalagaan din, di ba?
Diba? Oh. Yeah. I think that's totally fair naman. I mean, just have empathy for other people on the road. Yun yung pinaka-concept niya.
Yan. Eto, maiba lang since we also address, parang the people who just got into cycling, who started commuting to work. I guess now, I'm guessing most people are gonna be riding to work since traffic is getting really bad and gas.
It's pretty bad again.
Oh, diba? And taas na ng presyo ng gas and whatever. Ito lang, from someone who's you studied traffic management, tips for all these people who have just started their commuting to work or planning to commute to work.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips coming from your profession, your point of view?
Yeah. And okay. I think one thing which the funny thing was I just want to tell the story because I like it. How I started biking to work was in 2017. My then girlfriend, who's now my wife, she moved into a condo where there was no parking for cars. So I was like, oh no, so parang how can I visit you now? Parang I'm gonna every time I go to you, parang aaway ako for like the 10 parking spaces in your building. So I said, you know what? I'll get a bike para at least I can bike to visit you. And then parang I get a folding bike and I can like put it in your condo when I'm seeing you, ganun. So that's how it started, diba? So I borrowed the bike actually from her sister. Then that's the first bike I started using. Then I was surprised I was able to do it. It was very convenient. That's when I started biking from my house to her condo, mga 2 kilometers. I was like, you know what? Nagagawa ko to. Konti na lang nakaka-bike to work na ako eh. So that's how it started. Like after that, I was like, oh, it's actually not so bad. I'll try biking to the office. So nagagawa ko siya. Then actually from there, parang my eyes just opened and it really became part of my life na. So, but I think maybe one thing which I would have done differently from that time, from starting out, back then kasi I didn't ride for fun very often. Parang nagko-commute lang ako eh. My advice for people, especially getting into cycling, it's fun, man. I mean, do it for fun. If you can ride on the weekends, if you can ride for coffee, ride at night to relax, ride at night to go have beers with your friends, have fun with it, man. I mean, I think when I started really doing it for fun, in addition to riding to work, I think mas lumawak din yung isip ko, and it really taught me a lot more about how to bike commute and also about how to do cycling policy. Once I started having fun with it, na parang at the end of the day, cycling is really fun. I want everybody to enjoy it, parang not just because it's good for the world, not because it's good for the planet. Definitely not because it's a sacrifice. Kasi hindi nga siya sacrifice eh. It's just really fun, man.
Ayan, sabi ni Marcos, it's basta cyclist talaga, sweet lover. Ayan. Ito, I love my wife's cycling club. Icebreaker kay Anton. Paano ka nagpapaalam mag-bike kay Mrs.? Ito kasing I love my wife's cycling club. Hirap silang mag-bike sa mga
Oh, man.
So ikaw, paano ka daw magpaalam?
I'm sorry, I think maasar kayo sa answer ko. Pero usually kasi, ako pa yung kailangan magpaalam na parang, it's like, hon, I don't wanna go bike today, gusto ko lang mag-game. Kasi usually parang siya yung mas masipag mag-ride. Kasi my wife also bikes to work and she also loves cycling. So it's like super duper easy. And yun nga, parang minsan, siya pa yung nag-schedule ng ride na ako yung tinatamad eh. So for me, I'm sorry, it's not a problem I have. Good luck, man. Sorry, peace.
Sa mga may chance po, maghanap na kayo ng maayos na asawa na ganyan.
Ganyan.
Yeah. Yung
I love my wife's cycling club. Saan po nakakahanap ng misis na ganyan?
oh man. Oh yeah, I think now just actually ngayon this is one thing na naging okay sa pandemic eh. Syempre I think one thing that's not so good is parang minsan nagkakaroon ng gatekeeping about cycling na parang parang mga pandemic cyclist di naman yung totoong cyclist, di ba? I think it's an attitude na I think it's really sad when people have that attitude kasi especially during the pandemic, mas marami nang nagiging na open talaga yung cycling to more people like especially more women, more younger people. I see a lot more women cycling now. So I think these days, kung hahanap ka ngayon ng girlfriend or boyfriend na nagbabike, I think now your chances of finding a partner who cycles as much as you is better than ever. It's like, there's never been a better time na maghanap ng jowang mahilig ng bike.
May kapatid po ba yan? Iba talaga kayo, no?
Iba talaga.
Itong I love my wife. Alvin Los
Yeah.
Sir Anton, sino mas mamaw sa inyo ni wifey sa cycling?
Oh, well. Andito rin siya. Actually, medyo actually, here's the thing. I think minsan may for those of you na especially yung katropa ni Pawes Guerra, mga gravel riders, alam niyo naman yung Blue Lug, di ba? I think number 1 budol site yan ng mga gravel cyclists. Minsan may dumarating na packages from Blue Lug. It's a bike shop in Japan na hindi ko alam. Minsan dumarating, tas it's for her. So I think kung sa mamaw mong budol, mamaw mong bike, actually, I think there's sometimes na kung ginaganahan siya, I have to keep up with her. So, yeah.
Yari kayo dyan.
Yari kami dyan. It's good. It makes it, but it makes it great, di ba? Na parang minsan kung magde-date night kami and we wanna go somewhere, parang bike tayo. So we just like bike everywhere and it makes it so much easier.
Sara, inggit kayong lahat, no? Para lang gusto humanap ng misis kagaya ng misis ni Anton.
Yeah. Sir Anton, sino sa inyo yung mas mahal ang presyo ng bike?
Ha?
Ayun. Yun si si Marco Sadsad, shout out to Ro and Mo. That's my wife, si Ro and Mobile and MNL. On IG, one word lang. On IG, on Facebook, it's Mobile in Manila. That's wife ko yan. At the time that we built her bike, mas mahal siya. Pero I think in the upgrade since then, hindi ko na alam.
Siya pa yung siya pa yung hindi alam kung magkano yung presyo ng bike ng asawa niya. Inggit kayong lahat.
Inggit kayong lahat.
Inggit kayong lahat.
Pero I have to say it's so much more convenient pag into cycling din yung asawa mo eh. I mean kasi kasi it's like pwede kang humingi ng upgrade for Christmas, for birthdays, tas parang your wife gets it. Parang tas alam niya din kung saan magsha-shop. You wanna give her stuff? Parang it's like what did I give my wife for her birthday? Parang I bought her a nice hub. Nagpa-build ako ng bagong wheels sa kanya. So that works out.
Diba? Ito nga, no? Pag pareho kayo, kasi ang daling magregalo, hindi ka na umula. Diba?
Yeah. Oh.
Kung di nyo kayang i-upgrade yung bike nyo sa asawa nyo, ang i-upgrade nyo yung asawa nyo.
Uy, huwag naman. Upgrade mo lang hobbies niya.
Hobbies, okay.
Upgrade mo hobbies niya.
Wait, speaking of cycling, magpa-plug lang ako. Our friends from Vitargo, because I was talking to them. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Vitargo. It's a carb drink na you take when you do a long ride.
Yeah.
Kasi they have this thing now na since we're all cycling now and like you and your wife and everyone watching. Plug lang natin. I just wanted to plug this kasi nga they see the benefit now, like they realize na okay, everyone needs nutrition on the bike regardless if you're an elite athlete, if you're training, if you're commuting, if you're just if you're recreational cyclist. So ito lang, may poster ba tayo nito? Ayan, ito lang. Kung free lang kayo, December 12, 9 a.m. to 12 noon, the
Cool.
Athlete of the New Age, a webinar on the best practices in strength and conditioning and sports nutrition. So you have speakers si Timothy Ting, Dwight De Mayo, and special participation of Carlo Buzzicelli. So yan, we'll post the link on the page if you want to join the webinar. So para naman hindi lang choco mucho yung kinakain natin sa ride. Kasi medyo step up na tayo dahil upgrade na tayo sa Choco Mucho. Hindi tayo pinansin ni Choco Mucho, si Vitargo yung mas ano tayo ni Vitargo. Sige, papadala natin.
Okay, sana yun, Choco Mucho part sponsorship, why not?
Diba, ayan o. Ano na
Tagal na naming liligawan yan eh.
Shout out kay
Choco Mucho cycling team.
So there, if you guys have time on Saturday, December 12, Saturday pa Sunday? Sorry, anong araw bang December 12? Sunday pala, sorry. Sunday, December 12, the Vitargo webinar. We'll post it on our page. I think I Love My Wife Cycling Club will post it on theirs. Yun, thank you Vitargo, Sasa, and JB. Thank you guys. So yan, try nyo yan. Kasi kahit, alam mo actually yung point lang nito, yung Vitargo, kahit tayo recreational, mag-akit lang tayo ng Antipolo, yung point naman sa, ako yung hindi ka wasak after.
Yeah,
diba?
yeah.
Yung may silbi ka pa rin the rest of the day na hindi ka nakaupo lang sa couch the whole day, which, diba? So, that's a
good point.
Diba? So, there. Thank you, Sasa. And, yun. We'll learn more about that sa webinar. So, thank you. Ayun. Anyway, balik tayo. So,
sure, yeah.
Wifey, how often do you ride? How often do you get to ride now?
Well, she also rides to work, pero mas malapit kasi yung office niya. I mean, like, it's not that, not that like it makes that much of a difference. Pero since she rides to work, sometimes, if we want to meet up after work to have dinner, then nagbabike siya. So we basically like ride. I guess we ride together like a couple of times a week na rin. Parang pag weekends we go together, bike din kami. I think maybe very rare na talaga kami nagkukotse. I think most of the time bike lang talaga kami because we don't have kids, so it's easy for us. But the interesting thing though is that even if you have kids, I want to shout out also to another friend of ours. Her name's Corina. Yung IG handle niya is 2 wheels 3 hearts. So she's a mom. And actually she goes around. She bikes around Metro Manila with a mamachari to carry your kids around. And then recently bumili siya ng yung gravel bike na step through yung sa I think it's a steel gravel bike. Step through siya, and she was able to put like a kid carrier on it. So actually yung itsura niya kasi medyo maputi rin siya. She really looks like one of these European moms going around with her kids in Manila. So actually parang even if you have kids, I think you can still do it. You can still be a parent. You can still take your kids around on a bike. Posible yan if you find ways.
Solid.
Yeah.
Pala. So do you notice these things like when you're out, parang does it feel like, do you end up working like, kunyari, syempre, steady ride with the wife.
Yeah.
Tapos nagbabike kayo, biglang, ano ba pwede ko gawin sa bike lane? Alam mo yun yung, syempre,
yeah.
Normal di ba? Parang pag nadaan mo yung bike lane, parang, do you criticize, like, kunyari, outside Pasig, kunyari, nasa ibang city ka, lalayitin mo ba yung bike lane ni whatever? Parang,
well, actually, you know what? It's funny, Mars, because I feel like a deep camaraderie dun sa mga kapwa LGUs ko. Kasi especially for some of the LGUs where their bike people are also bikers. We're all friends. So I want to shout out especially to my friend in QC, si Ramir Angeles. I think QC has done a great job. In Valenzuela, we also have a friend there. His name is he's a guy named King Urieta. I think they're also doing a fantastic job in Valenzuela. I think the shout out kanina yung Tagalog fishing village sa Valenzuela. I think mas marami dun. It's really a nice example of bicycle infrastructure. So, I mean, who else can I shout out? Yung Taguig also. Actually, the guys in Taguig who do their bike stuff, mga long-time fixie riders yan. So, matindi sila. I mean, those guys are really bikers. So, I think it's, I think when I see other bike lanes, actually, if they do bike lanes better than us, I like it. Parang pinipicturean ko pa because that way I can tell, parang I can go back to Pasig and say, hoy, napag-iwanan na tayo. I mean, like, we need to do better. It's I think in this kind of job, where you're trying to change the entire Philippines. Actually, parang we need to help each other talaga. So parang when I see other bike lanes, especially some that are doing better than us, it makes me happy. I mean, makes everybody keep up. Parang positive talaga.
And for everyone who's been thinking na, ay, malamang hindi nagbabike yung mga gumawa ng bike lane na yan. Ayan. Si Anton na mismo nagsabi, lahat, yung mga gumagawa ng bike lane, nagbabike din naman. So,
Well,
I'm sure a lot of people have that, thing in their mind na, ay, I'm sure hindi nila alam yung, so they do naman, and they're all friends, and they talk about
yeah.
it. So,
I think although I have to say, Mars, na the people who are doing bike planning right now is that I feel like some of them are in the same position as me, and maybe this is where the most I'll say about it is that yung pagpasok namin, a lot of them are also like young people exposed to like newer ideas. I think sometimes they're in a position where you also have to compromise a little to get anything done. So I think maybe it's one of those cases where we're I try to empathize naman if there I see a bike lane that's not so great. I also understand sometimes you're doing your best and you still need to change the system a little more. And you kind of take the wins you can. Like you said with the post you guys made, sometimes there's setbacks, but I think that's where, it's like with any other kind of job, diba? Sometimes you don't always get what you want, but you need to fall back, you need to strategize, and you call on your friends for help. So I think yun yung naging important dito sa trabaho na to na parang you need to take the wins and turn your losses into wins din. Parang they're good and bad days.
nice. Ayan.
Oh.
So, eto lang, last before we go, kasi 9:30 na naman tayo, something that we can look forward to when it comes to like the bike lanes in the future? Is there anything that we can be excited about?
Sige.
Spoiler
You know,
alert.
I think maybe some of the big stuff we have planned in the pipeline is that number one, I think yung Capitolio intersection, we're working on bringing that treatment to some other intersections in Pasig. I think that's going to be really exciting. We're also, I think for those of you that follow transportation, syempre Pasig City will start to be, I think we'll have 2 stations of the subway project. There will also be 3 stations of the yung tinatawag na MRT4 going from Taytay to New Manila. So it will also pass through Pasig. There's going to be a lot of construction of transportation in Pasig, and I think when that happens, we're going to make that, or we're trying to take that opportunity to make it also really bike friendly. And I think besides that, we're also working to improve bike parking. I think we installed I think over 1,000 bicycle parking racks last year in Pasig City, and I think we're looking to do even more. I think hindi lang bike lanes. We talked about bike lanes a lot here, but I think it's also super important to have good bike parking, and that's also a big part of our program.
Solid. Teka lang.
Yun.
Pakonsya ka
Sige.
pa ba?
Mm.
Wait. Ayan. Sorry, ano yung sasabihin ko? Ayan. Sorry, basahin ko lang. So, nawala ako. Hello, my wife cycling club. Suggestion to add more bike repair stations.
Yeah. I think that's also really important. I think the bike repair stations as we've seen now, syempre yung challenge sa kanya is how to keep the tools well maintained. Kasi if you put a bike repair station up, tas may tools siyang nakakadena sa station, sometimes nawawala. So I think it's important to have that. We're looking for better ways to do it. Parang I think the placement is also important. I think maganda rin yung ginagawa sa Europe minsan sa mga trails, sa mga bike paths. May mga vending machine na nagve-vend ng inner tubes, ng patch kit. And I think that's also really cool. I think okay sana kung may ganun din tayo dito.
Solid.
Yeah.
Ayan. Sabi ni Sir Edward Perlas of CNC Carbonation Cycling, more bike shops in Pasig, please.
Oh yeah. I think that's I think one thing which I'm still trying to study how to do is how to have more bike shops in general in the Philippines. I think syempre parang ang lakas ng cycling boom. I don't think it's gonna go away. I think it's really important to encourage more bike shops. Maybe I think maybe there can be even tax incentives, economic incentives you can give to bike shops to make it easier to open. Okay, sana kung may training din tayo for bike mechanics, Tesla for instance, to encourage more people to take it as a career.
Ayun.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, thank you, Anton, for joining us tonight.
Sure. Yeah. Nice to be here. I think it's 9:30 na pala, di ko napansin. It's been a really nice chat.
And then we learned a lot. Like, there's parang just the change of mindset na, it's more to just bike lane. It's not just the type of vehicle that you're using. Parang it makes some, di ba, makes more sense now. Na
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it. The whole, it's overall it's bigger than just the bike lane. There's more to
Tama,
it.
tama.
Diba? The goal is bigger than just the bike lane. It's important to us. The bike lanes are,
Yeah.
diba, for us also, we're all cyclists.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger picture. So at least now
Yeah.
we understand that. Na
Yeah.
it's a bigger thing. It's something that everyone has to work together to achieve. Diba? So, yun. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Super
Thank you
nice.
for the time. We hope you had fun.
Oh, I had a lot of fun. Parang it's really nice to come on. It's really nice to have a chat with you guys. Good luck syempre kay Paco. Parang ikaw yung pride natin in Europe. I think that's really cool.
Ito lang before we go, Paco and Anton, nagpapa-shout out si Trek Metro PH. It's the anniversary of their cycling group. So, congratulations on your anniversary, Trek Metro
Congrats.
PH Cycling Group.
Nice.
Good job.
Yan.
Good
Yan
job,
din actually,
good job.
yung sinasabi ni Anton kanina. Trick PH?
Trek Metro.
Trick Metro PH.
Trek.
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 Metro.
Kala ko trick.
Trek.
Pero yun nga yung sinasabi ni Anton kanina, di ba, na medyo may gatekeeper mentality minsan yung mga siklista na dahil nagsimula ka lang nung pandemic, hindi ka totoong siklista. Pero obviously, hindi ganoon yung case. Meron tayo nakikita ngayon tulad niyan, 1-year anniversary ng cycling
Yeah, di ba?
group ng mga, di ba, ng mga I'm sure ang dami nagsimula dito nung pandemic lang, and yun yung gumagawa, yung make up ng ating demographic ngayon.
Yeah.
So congratulations sa 1 year.
Congratulations. Yeah, definitely. Sana maging 10 years din yun. Maging 20 years forever na yun.
Diba? Ito pa.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mapua Cycling Community from Melvin
Yun,
Alcantara.
shout out. Shout out. Parang I think yun nga, shout out. I think yung okay din kasi it's like what happened dun sa Xavier Boys, di ba? It's like I think maraming mga school groups na mabawal na mag-basketball. Siyempre pwede na ulit, di ba? But then I think for a while mga bawal mag-basketball, naging parang napunta dun sa cycling yung lahat ng mga athletic na alumni eh. Which is super cool.
Ang dami nagpahanap sa akin bike size 61.
61. Oh.
Parang bakit puro basketball player? Kasi nga walang basketball.
61 yung mga pinag-upgrade ni Marco Sadsad. Siya yung magaling mag-source nun eh.
I love my wife cycling club. Shout out sa misis ko, road bike ethos.
Sana ma-approve yung ethos purchase mo.
Yung
unahin mo kasi yung sa kanya.
Ayun lang, yari ka dyan.
Yun lang.
Para ano mo na yan, sabihin mo, plan yan sa office na, binigyan kami ng bike loan, bike incentive. Binigyan ng ethos office, ayoko nga pero yan lang, ganyan.
Ay, yun lang yung available eh.
Oo. Ayan, any last message to everyone watching? Anton?
Siguro I think maybe that's it. Keep cycling, share the road, be nice to bikers, be nice to everybody. Ayan, I guess be nice and have fun cycling.
Ako?
Ayun, syempre, yun nga, parati tayong nagpapasalamat sa mga guest, and especially ngayon, si Anton, nakikita natin na meron tayong tamang representative, tamang voice para mag-represent ng mga needs ng mga siklista, and I'm sure hindi lang sa Pasig, pati sa ibang lugar. At ayun, so talagang gusto namin magpasalamat dahil binigyan mo kami ng oras ngayon para makita ng ibang tao na meron tayong representative na tulad mo sa mga lugar na nakakagawa ng mga policies para matulungan yung safety, pati yung culture ng cycling sa Pilipinas. So, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, actually, thank you talaga to you guys, Mars and Paco, for the opportunity. Actually, sobrang okay. Sobrang nag-enjoy talaga ako. And yun, thanks din sa mga audience natin, especially yung mga friends natin, sina Marco, sina Aldrin, sina Joseph. I think it's really nice to see all the friends here also.
Oh, and we're anytime you guys have announcements that you want to make, and we're always here to help out. Same
Yeah.
way as you guys are there to help us out also. Thank
Yeah, and
you.
of course.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Ayan.
Sure.
Ayun. Thank you guys for watching. Meron ba kayong gustong pasalamatan pa ako, mga sponsor mo?
Wala naman. wala pa.
Wala pa.
May gusto
sa
kong
ngayon.
batiin na nandito ngayon?
Wala naman.
Wala. Okay. Ayun, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Anton, Ako, like to thank Specialized Philippines, Specialized Asia Hub, Nike Philippines, Tumi, Endurance Lab, Rudy Project, Vitargo. Thank you guys. Don't forget to sign up for their webinar on the 12th. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week.